The world he lived in had been destroyed. People had to fight monsters just to survive. He also spent his whole life that way, defeating a monster and wiping the sweat from his face, living like that for a day, for an entire month, cutting down another monster, repeating the process for another year. Suddenly, 10 years had passed ridiculously fast, and with a sword, he cut down any monster without fear, until a humanoid monster appeared before him, telling that human to give up, for the world he lived in was already gone. The commander behind all that chaos, saying his resistance was a waste and that he should become his sword. However, the young man shouted that it was meaningless, charging toward the creature with his sword, and preparing to cut it from top to bottom. The monster tried to punch, but the young man dodged, managing to wound the creature's fingers. The demon turned to face the human, just as he prepared to slash at him again. Another punch came flying at his face, trying to land a hit while the young man kept dodging. The monster said it didn't matter how hard he tried, he was still an insect before him, throwing punch after punch, but the young man kept dodging, until one landed square in his chest. He jumped back to regain his balance, then charged again, seeking victory. As he prepared to cut the demon, the creature raised its hand to attack as well, hurling the human to the ground like he was a mosquito. The human stood back up after that, refusing to fall before the demonic creature, until he noticed something different about the necklace on its neck. The young man decided to aim for it, preparing his sword, then quickly throwing it at the creature. The strike hit the monster just as the creature's hand also hit the boy, but right above his head, the demon's necklace had been destroyed. The creature cursed the human, calling him a bastard, while the young man remained standing, watching the demon's necklace shatter. The creature groaned, denying what had happened, but was ultimately destroyed by the energy in the end. The young man lay on the ground with his face covered in blood, his hand resting on his forehead, trying to relax. He looked at the sky one last time, saying it was a magnificent view. A person in slippers walks through arid streets. The young man with messy black hair, a white outfit, and a backpack on his back. An alarm suddenly sounds, asking the hero to scan their registration number and unique ID, with a sign behind warning that this is a rank B portal with public access prohibited, and that the general public who aren't heroes should reconsider entering. The young man stands before Yongsan-gu, the special city of Seoul. Then he braces his leg, causing a cloud of dust to explode. The alarm warns that an unregistered hero has forcefully opened the gate. He stares at that place with his brown eyes. Now that a forest had appeared there, the young man starts walking forward, but someone calls out to him, asking if he got lost along the way, saying they don't know what kind of situation this is, but they're leaving now, so the guy should just follow them. He simply observes the people without answering. A girl whispers something about his clothes, and her companion replies that he really didn't look like a hero. Though carrier uniforms are cheap these days, that kind of outfit, and asks what was with the backpack, wondering if he was just a porter who got ditched by the heroes he came with, but quickly dismissing that idea. The young man says he gets what they're talking about, and that he just entered. A man comments that he said something about being abandoned, and his buddy responds that he's seen a lot of people like that and can guess what was going through his mind when he entered the gate. Trying to hunt based on what you see on the internet or TV is just asking for death, and first you need a proper hero license, since this is a C-rank portal. The young man replies that he appreciates the advice, but isn't particularly thankful, surprising the heroes by saying that, while they say he's some kind of bastard, their leader stops them. While the heroes complain about being held back, their leader tells them to forget it, saying he's the type that ignores warnings like that and had no choice but to experience it firsthand. The gate was completely different from what he saw on TV or online, just as an orc appears in front of him, and the young man calls it a waste of space. The creature recognizes the intent of the sword. It charges to attack the young man while he calmly adjusts his backpack and closes his eyes. He dodges the orc's punch with utmost ease and says something about 10 years, causing an explosion in that area. The creature is merely surprised as the man runs forward ready to punch, destroying the monster's head and then landing on the ground right after. The young man looks ahead calmly, saying that in the end, it really wasn't any different. The creature dissolves in front of the young man, and so he simply reaches out his hand, grabbing the sword that once belonged to the orc. He stares at it silently, pointing at the monster's core, and then destroys it right after. The young man drives his sword in, revealing a shimmering stone that he pulls out from inside, a basic level magic stone, and he says that in the past, he wouldn't even have looked at these low-level ones. Then he stores the crystal in his backpack. The young man looks to the side as he feels a tremor. Other orcs were approaching from there, roaring as they tried to attack him with their blades. He simply dodges by moving downward, gripping the crystal tighter, and then throwing it at the head of one of the orcs. The body falls to the ground as its partner charges forward. The creatures try to attack before he can react, and the young man simply watches. The teen from before was passing by. The red-haired girl then asks about that rude man from earlier, and wonders if he would lose his life so easily, while her companion asks if she's worried. The leader explains that if he's an unauthorized intruder, agents from the control center will be coming. This place, the Namsen portal, is rank C, so elite agents at rank B or higher will be dispatched. If he's not crazy enough to attack the monsters first, he won't lose his life, so there's nothing to worry about, and the big guy says he's right. Because that rude bastard is probably trembling right now and should just wait for the agents to come save him. But then, an orc trembles in fear as it gets punched by the young man. The other creature tries to attack him from behind, but its blade only hits the ground. The creature turns around nervously, only to find the young man ready to kick it, launching it downward and crushing its head with a kick. Both orcs remain defeated on the ground, as the young man prepares to attack again, saying he has 3 more stones. The day passes after that. The young man's backpack was full now. He thinks this place was bad, but he managed to get 12 low-grade stones and 16 medium-grade ones. But an agent was behind him and calls the young man to follow this path. 4 agents stand in front of him, and one of them introduces himself as a member of the Portal Control Center, ordering him to show his hero registration. But if he doesn't have one, he must go to the Control Center. The young man simply repeats Control Center, and the irritated agent tells him to follow instructions. Like a beast, the swordsman stares at him, saying that this is annoying. The agent who spoke tells his blonde colleague to get the cuffs, and he starts talking about cooperation, saying that if he refuses to follow orders, they must apply physical pressure, grabbing the swordsman's wrist, and saying that if he resists, causing any physical damage, it'll be his responsibility, and they must go to the control center to settle it quickly. But the swordsman just twists the blonde's wrist, making him tremble, surprised by the strength. Then, the young man tells him to stop being annoying and go back. The agents draw weapons from their suits, emitting electricity from the equipment, a 4th-grade magic sealing device which should work on orcs or something like that. The swordsman then twists the blonde agent's wrist, saying this is the final warning. They should leave if they don't want to get hurt even more. The agents charge at the young man, but he grabs both magic devices with his hand. One of them tries to kick him, but misses again. Then the swordsman readies his leg, kicking the agent in the ribs. The man is sent flying with the blow, while the swordsman kicks the other agent in the stomach. The bespectacled agent watches in fear, then mumbles something quickly, a bit scared. The young man simply turns to him, disappearing in a matter of seconds. Paranoid, the agent wonders if he really vanished. But the young man lands a punch in his stomach. The agent staggers back afterward, as the young man calls out to him, asking if registered heroes don't have problems, and the agent confirms, saying that as long as they don't commit any illegal acts inside the gate, there's no reason for agents to show up. However, the swordsman asks about the fracture zones, the passages to another world where strange monsters appear around the globe, and so, they gained energy resources through hunting, which is why the state controls them. But an unknown space that hasn't turned into a gate yet is still called the fracture zone. The swordsman asks if it didn't matter how many portals he entered, those agents would keep watching him, talking about authorized entry or something like that. The agent says yes, and that's correct, because the central office gets notified whenever someone unregistered enters, and agents are dispatched. But fracture zones can't be entered as easily as gates, and even the Hero Association can't do anything about them. The young man asks what he's supposed to do, while the agent thinks to himself that this guy is a crazy bastard because he should have reported to headquarters from the start. Then he's thrown far away. The young man hurls the agent with ease, thinking he wasn't anything special. That agent calls the young man a bastard, saying he'll definitely take his life. The Demon King's crystal had shattered. He denied that fact until his final moment. Hearing his voice nearly screaming made him lose consciousness, feeling like he was being pulled into something, thinking that this must be what dying feels like, and that's exactly what he thought. His eyes stayed closed for a few moments, then opened shortly after. The young man found himself in some kind of inverted sky. A boy stood in front of him, and the swordsman asked who he was. That boy introduced himself as Seo Dojun and said he was losing his life, and if the swordsman would listen to his request, he could quietly disappear like this. However, the swordsman refused. Seo Dojun was stunned by that answer. The swordsman said he had nothing left to do while alive, since he fought for 10 years and was betrayed by everyone he trusted, and even his family and friends had died. He asked what the point of life was, because he felt the same way too. Seo Dojun replied that if his life was like that, then he wished his grandmother and Yeon Young didn't have to live the same way. The swordsman just sighed, asking if that was all, telling him to calmly state what his wish was. Seo Dojun began to speak. And so in the special city of Seoul, at the Gansan Digital Complex in Jungcheon-gu, it was now called the Hero Complex, to summarize it, a place with more portal byproducts than companies. The young man walked through those streets and entered a shop, saying this must be the place. A clerk with a tattoo on his arm welcomed him. Seo Dojun said he'd like to sell some magic stones, and the man said he came to the right place, They pay the highest prices in South Korea. So the young man simply dumped the orc stones onto the table. The clerk was surprised, thinking he should have at least cleaned the blood off before bringing them in, then asked for a moment to organize the stones, asking if the young man wanted a coffee while he waited, and Siu Do-jun replied that anything was fine. The young man waited while drinking coffee on the couch. The clerk said there were 12 low-grade crystals, 16 mid-grade, and 5 high-grade, and that he should know the commission rate was 40% of the purchase price. So the total he received was 5,460,000 won, but Siu Do-jun told him to stop, asking about the 40% commission if all they did was hunt there. The clerk said he clearly didn't know much, because they usually take 45%, and they were only making an exception this time. But if he didn't want to sell, he could take the stones back since he wouldn't get a better price elsewhere, and Siu Do-jun began to do just that. The clerk grabbed his hand and pinned it to the table, saying he had to pay the sales fee because the coffee wasn't free minus 300,000 won for labor and 10,000 won for the coffee. But since he didn't seem like he'd bleed much, if he gave them 350,000 including towel costs. But the young man said he had no money. The clerk told him he had to pay because some C-rank heroes were after him, calling him a bastard. Those heroes came out of a door. A man with a scar over his eye asked why they'd been called and who was causing trouble again. Siu Do-jun just glared at him fiercely, and the hunter did the same. The clerk trembled in fear. As the scared hunter was thrown in his direction, Siu Do-jun had landed just one punch, and with that, he defeated those 3 hunters. The young man walks forward slowly, saying that the commission was 1%, and they would be doing legal business from now on, because he would be coming next time. A sum of money drops onto the table. His grandmother and Young are impressed by it. The woman asks what kind of money that is. Siu Do-jun says he borrowed some money from a friend by doing company work before and ended up becoming really successful. His grandmother questions whether he even has a friend, and the young man says that where he grew up, there was a friend he needed to pay back. His grandmother looks at the money a bit hesitant, while Young asks her appa if they're rich now. He says yes from now on as he gently pats his sister's head. The girl starts jumping around the room, repeating that they're rich now. Siu Do-jun just watches in silence, thinking about the wish of his former self, who asked his grandmother and Young that they could live in the safest house possible, and then disappeared without even waiting for an answer. Looking into a mirror, when the swordsman woke up, he had become Siu Do-jun. The safest house in Korea costs 11 billion won at current market prices, and there was no obligation to keep a one-sided promise, but if his power returned, that money would be nothing. Fractures, portals, monsters, everything in this place was weaker than in his ruined world. To him, the god of the sword, this place was child's play. However, not even 10% of his power had returned yet. A voice from outside asks if Siu Do-jun is there. He gets up saying he'll check and tells his grandmother to stay inside, then opens the front door, coming face to face with 2 men, one big and one small and blonde. The big guy asks if Do-jun plans to pay his debt sometime, and the blonde one questions if he even knows how much it is minus 48 million won. These were the loan sharks who had been chasing the real Siu Do-jun before he died. 5 million won from a hospital account under his grandmother's name had multiplied tenfold in no time. The big guy says he went into a portal and made some money, so he should hand it over, while the blonde one points out it's all in the contract. To avoid making the situation more ridiculous, Siu Do-jun simply moves his fist forward, landing a punch right on the big guy's face and sending him flying. The blonde one just watches, a bit startled, wondering what the hell that was. Siu Do-jun says the amount paid was around 9 million won, but instead of paying, he wanted to receive money. The blonde asks if he's really Siu Do-jun, but the young man simply tells him to inform his boss that he'll be visiting soon as he clenches his fist, then sends the man flying as well. In the middle of a mall in Seoul, there was a store full of teddy bears. Young asks if she can really get a new doll. Siu Do-jun confirms now she could choose whatever she wanted. Sharing memories with his former self had also changed his emotions. For now it was just empathy. But Siu Do-jun was kind to the girl, who was his half-sister from a different father. At the very least he would protect that heart. The girl picks up a small bunny plush and asks if she can take that one. The plush was small, but Siu Do-jun grabs the biggest one, saying he really would buy her anything she wanted. The girl scratches her head, then they go eat. The little girl calmly eats a hamburger, but someone recognizes Siu Do-jun. It's a fat woman who shows up in front of him. She asks what's with that face, dressed like that, he didn't even look like anyone, and asks who the girl next to him is. If she was a mistake like his mother, which makes Siu Do-jun furious. The young man simply glares at the woman and her guards, irritated. While Eun-young wonders who that woman is, Seo Do-jun stays silent, just listening. The woman keeps smiling while watching them. Eun-young was still confused about what was happening. Then the fat woman asks what her name is, and the little girl introduces herself, saying that dressed like that she looked poor, just like her mother, and asks if Seo Do-jun agreed with her. Getting no response, she asks if he's gone mute now, becoming annoyed that he's not replying, calling Eun-young a brat, and asking if she knew what the word night worker girl meant. Seo Do-jun gets even angrier hearing that, saying she's ugly like an ogre. The woman turns around, not understanding. Then the young man just stares at her with intensity. Seo Do-jun was born an illegitimate son and lived in poverty. His mother died when he was 7, and he barely managed to reach his biological father's house. He lived for 10 years surrounded by discrimination and contempt, and his father's legal wife gave birth to a son, leaving him behind, until he was kicked out and forced to live with his maternal grandmother and a half-sister he had never met before. The swordsman wondered what kind of heart Seo Do-jun must have had to endure all that for so long. But now things would be different, saying that they had lived together for 12 years, but his sister was still disgusting, with an ugly face and a horrible personality too. And on top of that, she was so dumb she couldn't even study. Someone like her had a terrible inferiority complex toward any woman who was more beautiful and kinder than her, someone who had nothing, and that child who cared about her oppa's financial situation. Thus glaring at the fat girl with hatred in his eyes, the woman gets angry and asks what he just said. But another woman approaches, saying it's been a while since she's seen Do-jun. The younger woman runs up to her, calling her mom, and asks if she knows what that bastard just said to her, but her mother tells her to stop, just to be quiet, and asks what kind of foolish behavior this was. Then she asks if Do-jun is doing okay, because even if he's busy, it would be nice if he came home once in a while. But Do-jun thinks she's a fake, since she tormented him for 12 years. The mother says that his father worried about him a lot, but the young man replies that it disgusts him, since they weren't even close enough for her to ask such things, telling that woman to get out of his sight. She looked at him angrily, but just accepted it, and turned to leave, wondering if this really was the Seo Do-jun she knew, because he used to bow his head even when slapped for no reason. The girl runs to catch up with her mother, saying they should go together, while Do-jun prepares to leave with his sister again, saying they'll go too, thinking that the Seo Do-jun who couldn't say a word and only looked down no longer exists, and it'd be good to act like this whenever possible. Driving a luxury car back home, the girl asks why her mother just left, when she should have hit that bastard, and if she even knew what he said to her, but the mother just calls for Manager Lee, wanting to know why Do-jun was still alive. The man responds that according to the report, Kang Cheol-woo definitely left him inside the gate and came back. The woman screams that that's exactly it, but asks why someone who should be dead was standing in front of her. Manager Lee says he's sorry and will check again, but the girl asks if he was supposed to be dead and what that even means. The woman just stares ahead coldly, while her daughter screams, demanding to know what's going on, and if she tried to take Do-jun's life. Her mother asks if she still likes him. The flushed girl says no, and that if her grandfather or father finds out, but her mother grabs her mouth, saying that it was something she would handle, so her daughter should mind her own business. The girl trembles in fear of her mother, thinking that he was bold to talk back and that he was just a lowly bastard. But she put an end to him no matter what. 10 years ago, fracture zones appeared, and monsters emerged from them to take people's lives. The world experienced extreme chaos, but with the appearance of heroes, the chaos settled, and magic stones were extracted from the monsters. Magic stones became the new energy source, and countries around the world put effort into turning fractures into gates, thus involving industries. In other words, in this world, making money meant becoming a hero. So he heads to the CHC headquarters in Yeongdeungpo, walking toward the building. That quiet place had its doors open. A host was smoking his cigarette, while his subordinate asks what that bastard was doing there, and if he really defeated his subordinates and shamelessly came all the way there. Seo Do-jun simply replies that no matter how it happened, it was still a loss, and the boss asks what loss he's talking about. The young man answers that he should receive mental, physical, and material compensation for the damage done by his subordinates, while the boss just realizes that his once kind personality had changed too, seeing how he crushed his staff. And without a doubt, this guy awakened inside the gate. So he says that based on how he's acting now, he must think something's changed since he awakened. 3 men then enter that place. They all glance sideways at Seo Do-jun, while the boss grabs his coat and says that he acts so confident after awakening, but in the end, he's just D-rank trash. And there are plenty of people below him who beat up loudmouth D-ranks. Do-jun just looks at him silently, telling him to sit back down, because he wasn't done talking yet. The bespectacled subordinate charges at him, saying some young delinquent shouldn't talk like that. But his glasses are knocked off his face, getting punched by Do-jun right after, and sent flying with just that one hit. The other guy gets hit in the face as Dojun comments that they don't just run loan shark schemes, because he knows they also forge identities, so he needs to become a hero and make money from now on, dodging a punch from one of the subordinates and striking him in the chest right after. The young man had taken down all the hunters with ease, telling the boss to create a perfect identity with no issues from now on, with the deadline being tomorrow. The subordinates are shocked to hear that, while the boss wonders what kind of power that was, since it wasn't D rank nor C rank, wanting to know if this bastard was B rank. Dojun asks if there's no answer, and the man responds that he'll do it. Then the young man grabs his shoulder and says he also wants to know if Hong Heiju told him to take his life. The boss only thinks about the woman, who doesn't answer, so Dojun tightens his grip, causing the man to scream in pain, yelling that that woman, Hong Heiju, said that she told him to pay with his debt and end up taking his own life, repeating that the woman said that and he should let him go. Dojun asks if that's why he was trapped inside the gate. While the boss says he doesn't know about that and that it's really true, and if he had died, they wouldn't have gotten their money, so they couldn't send him into the gate. It's the truth. Dojun thinks for a few seconds, saying the name Kang Chiolwoo, because he was the one who brought him to that gate, and the boss should bring information about him tomorrow as well, then leaves through the front door while the subordinate bows. The young man reflects on it as the wind hits his face. That request from the old Dojun was something he found lonely. But while he was in this body, he would set everything straight, with a B-rank hero ID in hand. The young man walks through one of the scanners, getting access as soon as his registration is confirmed as below the recommended grade. But it would be dangerous, and he should think carefully before entering, and Dojun complains that that bastard boss should have given him an A rank. Then walks into the chamber despite the warnings about being underleveled. The Bansim portal, B rank with D grade scaling, where the recommended level is A rank and no more than 2 people may enter. A B rank portal, but with D grade scaling, made it hard to clear solo, and even so, its format allowed for solo adventures, being difficult to clear unless you were A rank. If he's truly unlucky, Dojun cracks a smile. He'd be face to face with hundreds of monsters, alone in the dark, in a narrow tunnel, coming upon a monster serpent. Dojun transforms his hand and says he likes this. The serpent prepares to bite the young man, but is easily sliced down by the hunter, while its partner tries to strike in the same way. A black death cobra was a serpent whose venom causes paralysis with just one strike, landing on the ground after cutting the creatures down, and doing the same with others in seconds, slicing another snake in half. The young man sighs a bit as his arm is hit by the green liquid, saying it's worth about 300,000 won, then shifts his vision toward his back, with several snakes also trying to strike. The young man simply slices them with his fingers, extracting the snake gems with his gloves, and splashing their blood into the air. The young man remains standing after that, complaining that they had no magic stones, and it was the same as the previous world, where the drop rate for magic stones from these black cobras was 3%, so he'd have to take out a few more hundred, entering another area of the gate, with some already melted skeletons lying around. Dojun repeats about taking one step, coming face to face with a snake larger than the others, and wondering if that was the boss here, because he wasn't sure if this was the right way, but it would do just fine. However, his glove was repelled even though it hit the snake, only its armor had been struck. He thought he'd finish it quickly so he could go back and charge toward the snake, only to be knocked far away as the monster used its tail. Dojun was slammed into the wall, damaged, while the snake lunged forward for another strike. The young man simply dodged by jumping back, but stomped hard on the ground, charging forward to throw another punch at the monster, hitting a purple surface with all his strength. The young man noticed something strange, wondering if his attacks weren't working on that snake. It was expected, since it was on a different level from the others he'd seen before, and its surface was hard, thinking that if he had recovered his strength, he could have done something different. But he noticed something odd on his foot, because a sword was embedded there. The young man glanced at it from the corner of his eye, then shut them, saying that even if it was old, there was no choice, because no matter how old the sword was, it only depended on who wielded it. So he pulled the blade from the ground, and said he would borrow it for a moment. Launching from the floor once again, the young man flew over that serpent, saying it should consider it an honor that he would personally shatter it to pieces, holding the sword hilt with the back of his hand. The snake lunged forward to strike as well, clashing with Dojun and triggering an explosion of light as a result of those perfect cuts. The young man took a deep breath afterward, saying he would have been in serious trouble if he hadn't landed that, then looked at the body of the serpent boss, draining its blood and taking a fang, commenting that it was short for a longsword, but if polished, it could be usable. His earnings were better than from Namsen, and he considered himself lucky. But he thought it took way too long to clear a B-rank gate. Recovering his strength was his top priority. He was sure that his former companions couldn't see him like this. A cat mascot stood in front of a store, While a man counted his jewels, the clerk commented that he had collected good magic stones and that the usual commission rate was 40%. That adventurer asked if that wasn't too expensive, since he was a regular customer and wanted a discount. However, the clerk said that their rate was the cheapest. Basic commission at a Sola Gate center was 5%, but they couldn't keep transactions going without charging those fees. With all that in place, they could make clean deals, and with that commission level, it was still profitable. The adventurer counted the money and said it was fine, but he wanted to know why the clerk's face was injured like that. He replied not to talk about it, because some crazy bastard had come in and beat up his guards and did that to him. The adventurer said his C-rank guards were too soft, and that's why he told him to hire better ones, since rankings were issued by the government. A guard who just manages a shop and a hero who risks their life hunting monsters don't have the same level of skill, and the clerk thought he should just leave already. So the man said they'd known each other for more than a day or two, so he should contact him if he ever needed help. Bumping into someone on his way out, Dojun had entered that store. The clerk panicked upon seeing him, saying he was the one who did that to him. The adventurer asked about that guy. He was tall and handsome, but caused an uproar there, clenching his fists as he asked if Dojun had caused that mess, and what was the point of a hero hurting innocent people. Didn't he know that heroes don't lay hands on civilians? The clerk reflected that he had 7 years of experience and knew many senior and junior heroes. But Dojun just told him to mind his own business and get lost, leaving the hero irritated as the clerk smiled. Dojun asked if he wanted revenge instead, as the man clenched his fists, thinking that the #1 cause of hero casualties wasn't monsters, but accidental fights between fellow heroes. So he grumbled that they'd meet again next time. He was busy this time and left the store. Dojun just looked at the clerk from the corner of his eye, saying it seemed like he was having lots of conversations about him, and then tossed a bag full of jewels onto the counter, telling him to calculate the whole amount. The clerk wondered about all those high-grade magic stones and who this guy really was, running some numbers on his calculator and saying the total was 150 million won. The young man thought that he'd hunted the whole day and that was all, telling him to just give him the 150 million. That clerk complained that they needed to deduct the commission, thinking he must have said something wrong. Dojun sighs, saying the fee was 1% and it came out to 148.5 million won. The clerk thinks about saying the fee is actually 40%, but informs him that for transactions over 100 million, they need permission from higher-ups. Dojun tells him to get that permission now, so the clerk reports everything that happened to his boss, while the young man snatches the phone out of his hand, saying he understands and wants all the money right now. The boss complies for the moment and tells him to change his team again. Dojun throws the clerk's phone against the wall and says that his superiors understand what he means and tells him to bring the money. The man accepts and hands over the cash. Dojun says they should do better business next time, and the clerk thinks as long as that thing could even be called legal business. 10 minutes later, in that same store, the superior asks why he didn't answer the phone and what that call earlier was all about, while the clerk complains that he really wants to quit this job because he can't take it anymore. His boss just stares at him, while the clerk hears a call coming through. The boss calls a girl named Ju Yan, asking her to come in, while a woman with purple hair walks through the city. As the woman walks down the street, more voices are heard. People ask if that really was high-end Ju Yan. When the woman finally arrives at the store, the clerk greets her, but is surprised to see Miss High-End Ju Yan. The woman introduces herself, saying he was right. While the clerk thinks she's South Korea's 4th S-rank hero, and he's heard she's the boss's niece, but he wants to know why she's here. The woman walks forward, saying that because heroes were pushing those inflated prices on magic stones, her uncle has been getting headaches, and asks if she can hear the full details. In a larger house, Eun Young plays with her stuffed animals while her brother meditates. Dojun tries to focus his mind. Even hunting every day, a mere 100 million at this point was still way too slow. He needs to start clearing S-rank gates as soon as possible, and to do that, it's vital to regain his former strength. But unlike in his old world, the atmosphere here has very little mana, so it would take 3 years of daily training, but he refuses, saying that would take too long. It would help to have good weapons and equipment, but here even trash costs hundreds of millions of coins. Dojun suddenly looks at the ground, then runs toward Eunyoung, grabbing the girl and telling her she needs to go inside, and leaves his sister there. The grandmother asks what's wrong, but then a tremor shakes their house. The girls scream about an earthquake. Dojun realizes it's not an earthquake, and it was probably. A purple energy overtakes the sky, spreading over their entire home area and forming a fracture. The grandmother asks what's happening, and a young man responds that it's dangerous and she must not leave the room, heading toward the fracture and placing his hand on it. At the Hero Association in Seoul's Special City Zone, someone informs their team leader that a new fracture has been detected in Mappo. It's the first new fracture in 63 days. Since it's in Mappo, the White Lion Guild is nearby, so they can be contacted immediately, and they must send the nearest heroes right away, asking for the exact location of the detected fracture, and the subordinate replies that it's in the backyard of a residential house. The team leader repeats a house, because that would be a problem. If a civilian who isn't a hero enters the fracture, it becomes impossible to pull them out. And if they lose their life, the monster wave that occurs over the next 10 days in the fracture zone could wipe out all of Seoul. He asks if they identified who went in, and the subordinate replies it was Seo Doo-jun, who lives at the location of the fracture, and it's his grandmother's land. He entered the zone trying to save his sister, so the probability of a monster wave occurring when civilians go in is high, a 99% chance. The agents are disheartened to hear this. A document slams down on Hong Hee-ju's desk. She repeats the word awakened and questions what was meant by Doo-jun awakening. Manager Lee responds that he hasn't registered yet, but he definitely awakened at the gate last time. Hong Hee-ju screams, asking what the hell that idiot Kang Cheol-woo did, because he should have killed that bastard directly, and now it just made everything more complicated. Plus, he took her money. So she orders Manager Lee to tell that idiot directly. If he doesn't kill Doo-jun, he must pay back 10 times the amount he received. The manager says there's no need to contact Kang Cheol-woo since a new fracture has occurred in Mappo, and it happened at the boy's house. They also confirm that he entered the fracture, and the media will announce it soon. Hong Hee-ju asks if that means she won't have to see that lowly bastard again, and her manager confirms it. The woman stays angry, glaring at him, telling him to keep it under observation until it becomes concrete. Doo-jun steps onto grassy land, under a clear blue sky, in the middle of a vast forest. The young man thinks it's hard to believe. It was the forest he sometimes visited as a child. The sounds of the forest, the trees and grass living there, even the abundant mana and the sky were identical. If he exited through that path, the young man smiles, saying, as expected, he had found the world tree with a crystal at its center, a sacred tree that holds the pure flow of mana. The reason the past world was destroyed was because the tree burned and the mana flow was ruined. The world tree was still intact, and he didn't understand why, but he could regain mana again this time. Sitting down to meditate at the world tree, he takes a deep breath, maintaining his focus. His eyes remain closed during his training session. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. He forgot to eat and drink and focused solely on breathing for 10 full days, focusing a little more while staring into the light. His eyes suddenly opens. Doo-jun calls out to the Volcana, who were sneaking around nearby. They were the bastards who burned the world tree in the past, charging at the swordsmen with full force. Doo-jun thinks it would be great if he had a water attribute sword, but the monsters get close to him. However, the swordsman didn't even care because he was going to crush them to pieces. Raising his hand toward the creatures, a burst of energy is released. The face of one Volcana is melted away, as Doo-jun turns his head to the side, turning to another of the creatures, and pointing his finger at it. The mana release bursts the gathered energy in the form of ki, causing an explosion. It had been a while since he released that much mana. The Volcana roar into the air, charging toward the swordsman. Doo-jun simply stares at the attacks, but they are blocked by a barrier. The young man says he's confirmed the safety of the world tree, and now he needs to check the mana in his body with his own eyes, cracking his neck before fighting the creatures. A Volcana opens its mouth to bite him. The young man grabs both monsters by their faces and slams them into the ground, taking down both creatures with ease. He uses the two monsters to smash into each other. Their flames burn even stronger, but then begin to fade, disappearing now. Doo-jun says the confirmation is complete, and if he takes care of these guys, he can also obtain the immortal embers, remembering that there's a high chance and wondering how much he'll get from these guys. Taking care of both monsters at once with his fists, destroying one of their bodies, Doo-jun gets ready to concentrate his mana, as he notices something on the ground, picking up the little yellow stone in front of him, calling it immortal embers, thinking how unbelievable it is to obtain them again. Releasing that fire into his hand, Doo-jun plays with the flame in his hand, thinking it'd be nice to get more mana from the world tree, but receiving too much mana from the world tree would be too much for his body. He wonders what he can do, since he must absorb these flames and change the attribute of his mana to fire, emitting the flame from his body. Doo-jun inhales his own fire, thinking that in the past, these flames didn't need to be absorbed, but it would take 10 minutes to absorb just one. He swings his arm afterward, and is surrounded by some small yellow firestones, saying he'll absorb as much mana as he can. A crowd watches the fracture from outside. Even reporters were present. A man in a suit curses the situation, asking what kind of hell was caused by a single crazy bastard, referring to Bang Seong-woo. His colleague, Kim Hyun-woo responds that he was trying to say to his younger sister. Bang yells that that's just what they say, and he was probably thinking about the rumor that awakening was easier in fracture zones, and if he wanted to die, he should have done it alone. Kim asks what their colleague Jilma said, and Bang replies that it was just manual stuff, and he was asking them to wait for the wave, but then wonders why, and Kim answers that apparently fractures had occurred simultaneously in the USA, China, UK, Turkey, and Sweden at the same time. And it wasn't surprising that their colleague was busy now, since it was the first time something like this had happened, but they say everything was under control. Bang complains that they were only screwed because of some kind of bastard. That bastard who went in first should just leave because he was going to knock him out. The fracture begins to shift. A news report announces that it's been 28 days since a new fracture occurred, and the Hero Association has issued a level 1 monster horde alert, as a precaution since the civilian who entered first hadn't come back out in over 2 days. The person watching turns off the TV. The boss asks if Mr. S was that bastard Seo Do-jun. His manager, Kim An-gu, the right-hand man of Seop, confirms, saying he had his men watch him, and it was definitely that bastard. Seop asks what the odds are of him making it back alive, and Kim replies that if he's a civilian, there's not even a 1% chance. The boss replies that calling him a civilian is ridiculous, because those idiots from the Hero Association gathered the wrong intel again. He asks, what if he awakened? Kim replies that he did awaken, and it would depend on his hero grade, but honestly, it's hard for him to judge too. Seop says he's right. Being good at fighting and surviving inside fractures are two different things. That bastard Seo Do-jun had 2 family members, and they were going to keep them safe. The manager asks what he was planning, and Seop says to treat them kindly. If Do-jun dies, they'll sell his family's organs, but if he comes back alive, they'll say they took care of them and create a debt. In the middle of the world tree, Seo Do-jun continues meditating to absorb the immortal embers, wondering how much time has passed. He's absorbed hundreds of immortal embers, and now can use fire attribute mana however he wants, and his fire resistance has increased dramatically. In terms of fire attributes alone, he now surpasses the state he was in before as the god of the sword, placing his hand on the world tree. The young man says that in the past, and even no, he just has to thank that tree. Then Seo Do-jun stores some jewels in a vine pouch, saying that they probably won't see each other again, but if they do, and she's in danger, he'll protect her no matter what. At dusk in the outskirts of the city, the young man exits the fracture, placing his foot on the ground right after, and saying there's no presence within a 1-kilometer radius, asking if everyone evacuated in preparation for the horde. There was some kind of strong aura in that direction, advancing while still gripping the pouch on his back. Bang and Kim were chatting while guarding the area. The young man thinks, based on their clothes, they're the same ones from the last gate, and it would definitely be a problem if he gets discovered. Using the fire element to alert headquarters, and launching it as hard as he can, the fire approaches a store. For a few seconds it remains untouched, but then explodes shortly after. Kim asks what that sound was, and Bang replies that it was fire, so both rush toward the site. While civilians remain in front of the store, Bang questions why there was fire there. Seo Do-jun watches from a distance and thinks that both the nature of the fire and the precision of the target were good, wondering if this flame was as admirable as Kusak's, since she probably found it enchanting after all. She was the strongest fire mage on the continent. Kim realizes what's going on, turning around and asking them to wait, because the fracture was acting strange, and Bang asks what he means. As the fracture begins to dissipate slowly, both agents run toward the site. Bang says that the fracture, the one they'd been observing for days, was vanishing right before their eyes. Seo Do-jun keeps walking through those streets, turning around when he notices the same thing. News suddenly reports that the new fracture that had appeared in Mappo had vanished at dawn today, and today marks exactly 29 days since Resident Seo entered the fracture zone, and the Hero Association, which had been preparing for a monster horde, was caught off guard by this. At the same time, a fire of unknown origin occurred at a junkyard near the fracture. People in the city gossiped that Mr. Seo must have died and that he shouldn't have gone into the fracture when it appeared, saying that someone died and they talk like that, talking nonsense, because if he hadn't done it, Seoul would have become a wasteland. Seo Do-jun thinks that if he had disappeared, he wouldn't get to see the world tree again. It's sad, but it was also a stroke of luck. Then he looks up at the sky, saying that there's someone he has to protect. So he heads toward the HCS capital. 2 subordinates were smoking outside. One of them comments that the bastard was dead, so the old lady and the kid were screwed, and his subordinate asks if the boss was really the kind of guy to go that far. The man replies that leaving the old lady aside, the girl would grow up to be beautiful, and the boss was probably already thinking of ways to use her there. Seo Do-jun calls the two of them out, asking where their boss was. A car pulls up in front of his desk. Seop gets out of the car, humming, while combing his hair and walking toward his organization. He says that now, with that bastard dead, he can finally sleep peacefully. Asking what today's schedule was, and Kim replies that he has a lunch with Representative Bake, but nothing planned for dinner. Seop tells him to contact Madame Kang and ask her to come over tonight, and if there are new girls, they should be dressed nicely. Climbing the stairs alongside his subordinate, the old man is caught off guard by what he sees. His subordinate is being hurled against the wall. Seop stares at the blood floating in the air, and then falls back himself, coughing intensely as he'd been wounded. Seo Do-jun says he'll make him crawl there like a dog. Seop is sweating heavily during all of this. The young man puts his feet up on the desk, asking if the boss can't hear him. Seop kneels in front of him. Seo Do-jun says he's a bastard who doesn't deserve to be treated like a human being, because he should bark like a dog. Seop starts barking slowly, doing it with all his strength. His subordinates stare at the walls in shame. Seo Do-jun tells him to bark louder, because in front of him, he acts submissive as if offering up his liver. But the moment there's even a small opening, he stabs you in the back. Then he asks if Hwan Chang-seop thinks it's his first or second time dealing with bastards like him. Seop begs to be spared, saying he'll be loyal like a dog, but receives a kick to the chin, and Seo Do-jun tells him to shut up. The boss falls back bleeding. Seo Do-jun calls out the manager, saying that he'll be the new boss for now, and he shouldn't work like a dog under the orders of that inhuman bastard, saying he should handle the higher-ups who don't actually work for them, and that he would allow it. The manager swallows hard, saying that his boss has some connections, and if he suddenly becomes the new leader, people might suspect something. So he pleads for his boss to be spared just once, clearly frustrated. Seo Do-jun says that realizing he's trash is his specialty, and if they're unwilling to do this, they can just throw him to the monsters as food. The subordinates, the manager, and the boss all panic at hearing this. Seop kneels once more and begs, banging his head against the wall repeatedly. Seo Do-jun thinks that breaking Hwan Chang-seop to this point would make things easier, then wonders when he became so soft-hearted, reaching out his hand to the boss, saying now. Seop smiles and grabs his hand, saying he's sorry for everything until now, and that he would serve only Kang Nem from now on. But then he notices his hand catching fire. Seo Do-jun says that was his last chance. Throwing the burned hand away, the ashes of the former hand begin to dissolve in the air. Seop groans in pain, clutching his wrist, while Seo Do-jun warns that if so much as a scratch appears on his family, they will be annihilated, and they must take responsibility and protect them 24 hours a day. Officially, Do-jun had become an existence that vanished along with a fracture. He goes to a restaurant, eating with his sister, thinking that the government, the Hero Association, and all forms of media were treating Do-jun as if he no longer existed, and if he revealed he was alive again, it could create problematic situations. Hwan Chang-seop would find a new home soon and had to move carefully. In-young eats her hamburger, saying it was nice when they went out like this. Seo Do-jun says that she could go to kindergarten like the other kids and go to school too, but In-young seems a little down now. Do-jun asks if she doesn't like kindergarten, and the little girl nods. Since the kids bully her for not having a mom and dad, Do-jun stays silent for a few seconds, then says it's okay. She doesn't have to go and doesn't need to see those bastards' faces. She can just start regular school next year. The girl gets excited and says she doesn't need to go to kindergarten. Do-jun wonders if he should send her to a private school where no one could look down on her. He considers putting the grandmother and the little girl in a hotel, and wonders if they had no sense. The manager says the hotel was built and is controlled by his company, and in terms of safety, but Do-jun cuts him off, telling him to forget it. Entering the room, In-young calls out to her brother, hugging him with all her strength. The grandmother holds her grandson's hand and says he really came back alive. In-young also cries, calling out to her brother, while the young man looks a bit hesitant, saying yes, he came home alive, and asks if her brother is a hero too. Do-jun wonders if she wants him to be a hero, but the girl shakes her head, saying she hopes not, because heroes fight scary monsters and sometimes lose their lives, so she hopes her brother will live with her and grandma for a long time. Do-jun tries to say something but then closes his mouth. He reflects on the girl's words, because even in his harsh past world, he was the human who survived until the end. Things are lost when fighting too many monsters. Something precious he'd have forgotten appeared at his side. In this place, he thinks he might live while protecting his small happiness. A helicopter flies across the sky. The Hero Association of the Republic of Korea, Na-ta Hwang, founder of the Hero Association and director of the World Hero Federation, asks if they really didn't find anything. His subordinate replies yes, and that currently, they can't determine anything. Na-ta complains that it's frustrating for a fracture to disappear on a random day all by itself. The assistant agrees, saying that variables are dangerous, It would have been better if a horde had appeared, but Nata tells her to watch her words, because considering civilian safety, that was actually lucky, and the girl apologizes. Nata Huang is one of the world's 100 most respected heroes, and if he ever ran for president, he'd have the highest vote rate in history, and with that in mind, he can influence people. But his interests aren't presidency or corporations, only civilian safety and fracture preparation. Nata says that if it takes too long, they must conduct another thorough investigation, and the agent replies that she understands, and that the resident of the fracture zone agreed to sell the house. The president tells her to pay more than market price so they don't feel looked down on. He hopes it'll offer some comfort. Then he manipulates one of the computers, analyzing data from that area. The fracture had occurred simultaneously in other countries as well, which wasn't normal. The girl asks if China and the US have already entered control phase, and Nate replies that the problem is the UK, since valuable heroes were dispatched to other fractures. But he notices a notification on his computer, saying, "This can't be real," with emergency alerts on his screen, reporting that the fracture in the UK is in danger. At a local subway station, Doojun walks wearing his usual hoodie. He heads to the gem exchange store. Opening that door suddenly, the clerk welcomes him, but quickly panics, telling his manager that it's the bastard who caused everything. The boss puts down the newspaper he was reading, asking if it was him who forced magic stone sales when he was outside. Dojin says that's perfect because he has magic stones to sell today and was waiting for someone high-ranked enough to process them immediately. Throwing his heavy backpack on the ground, the boss thinks he probably brought low-quality magic stones like last time, saying he won't do business with him and asks him to leave please. Dojun repeats his words about not doing business. Then the boss says he might not know, but a 1% commission causes massive losses, so he won't do business with him again and should just leave. Dojun warns him that he'll regret that. The boss says he's being unreasonable, and that the portal center takes 5% commission along with the distribution structure of magic stones, so he should pick up his bag and leave immediately and not come back. Dojun kicks the bag, causing the stones to spill across the floor. Both the clerk and the boss are stunned, asking if that was a hero-grade magic stone worth any price named. Dojun says that if they don't want it, they can forget it. The hero-grade magic stone. Kurzman, a famous drug dealer in Mexico, was decomposing magic stones to manufacture narcotics. An explosion occurred in his office, and as soon as the magic stone's ability manifested, he awakened as a hero, and since then, that stone has become legendary, being extremely difficult to obtain and one of the most expensive things. Dojin says he'll pack the stones and leave, while the boss tries to make a sale, asking if he'd like to sit and wait a moment. The clerk is cleaning the stones on the counter. Then the boss calls Dojun's attention, asking if the 0.5% fee wasn't a little excessive. Dojun says if he doesn't like it, he should just forget it, but the man shouts that he was only curious about why he wanted to lower it to 0.5%, and Dojun says it's because they pissed him off. So the boss lowers his head and apologizes, saying he was too rude. Dojun says he's tired of hearing apologies and tells him to just say whether they're doing business or not. The clerk thinks that this bastard really has no manners, but the boss says it's fine, giving a long explanation about why they have to charge commission. But Dojun says that's too much talking, and if he doesn't like it, he should just drop it. The boss tries to negotiate for 9% so nobody loses anything. Dojun tells him not to take a loss, yet the boss pushes for 8%, trying various other percentages while Dojun keeps rejecting, and the clerk continues wiping the magic stone. The boss finally kneels before him. Dojun says that considering their past relationship, he'll allow a 1% fee, while the boss thinks about calling him a thieving bastard, but stays silent. The young man says that, just so they know, he has 7 more bags like this one, instantly shocking the clerk and the boss. The boss immediately orders his subordinate to bring the contract. Dojun receives 67 million won in his bank account, thinking that at this rate, an 11 billion won house wasn't that far off. And the real problem was that portals weren't enough to obtain high-level magic stones if he could travel freely through fracture zones. But then a warning appears on their phone. The boss asks what that is, and if a wait is coming, as an alert pops up in England telling people in Korea to wait for confirmation. Dojun just watches it silently, thinking. The young man looks at the notice with his head down for a few seconds, then shifts his eyes to the boss, and says that those without real ability. In the past, it didn't matter what country or association was involved, he had to go to the fracture zone. But he doesn't want to live like that anymore. A piece of meat sizzles on the grill. An Young looks at it hungrily, as the family enjoys a meal at a restaurant. The grandmother says 250,000 won per 100 grams is way too expensive. But Dojun says he made a lot of money this time, so she doesn't need to worry and should eat as much as she wants. Ian Young brings the meat to her mouth, and as she eats, her eyes begin to sparkle. The girl is amazed by the flavor. Her grandmother just watches the meat being grilled. Dojun notices this right after, saying he needs fresh ribs, prime sirloin, mandrill tail, and a swallow's nest, so those 4 items should be brought. The grandmother asks if he's not overdoing it and how they're supposed to eat all of that. Dojun says she should eat without holding back today and that she needs to eat well too. The grandmother calls out to her deity while Eun-young offers her food, saying the meat is really delicious and she should try it soon. The elderly lady says her Eun-young is so kind and then tries the meat. Becoming surprised at how flavorful it is, the family shares a happy moment there. But a woman approaches. She asks if that's Mr. Seo Dojun. Ju-yeon wants to know if they can talk for a moment, because he's a hero, but Dojun interrupts the girl, asking if she can't see that he's having a meal with his family. So if she has business, she should speak to him after the meal. Ju-yeon stays silent for a few minutes, wondering if she really is Hyeon Ju-yeon, and what kind of man he was. In the waiting room, the girl waits for him. People in the restaurant watch the S-rank heroine waiting for Seo Dojun, wondering if she really is that world-famous star heroine, and she definitely deserves to be among the top 10 most beautiful heroines. But they want to know what kind of man he is to make Ju-yeon wait. The girl reflects that 2 months ago, Seo Dojun entered a portal and survived. He probably awakened and was believed to have died in the new fracture in Mappo. But he was clearly alive and standing there, a man who made her tense with just a look and a single word. And how could someone awaken for less than 2 months already be S-rank when it had taken her 5 years? But there was no way this man became S-class just like that. He must have some other special ability. The door suddenly opens. Hyun-young walks out first, thanking for the meal. Dojun locks eyes with the heroine. Someone steps in front of the family. Seo Dojun remains silent for a few moments. A man asks if he's seeing things wrong, and how Dojun escaped that portal. It was Kang Cheol-woo who calls him an insect. Ju-yeon wonders why, of all people, Kang Cheol-woo appears right now, while the man simply stands in front of Dojun. The young man steps to the side, avoiding him, saying that Ju-yeon has business with him. Kang Cheol-woo recognizes the heroine. Dojun says he'll listen to what she has to say, and asks her to take care of his family. And the woman asks what kind of favor that is. The young man asks her to get a taxi and place the 2 of them inside, because he has to go now, since there's a debt that must be paid, emitting his energy while facing Kang Cheol-woo. Inside the Azure restaurant, Ju-yeon escorts the women to a taxi and tells them not to worry too much and just head home, waving goodbye to Eun-young, calling her an adorable little girl, and the taxi drives off, taking the 2 women home. A loud slap against Kang Cheol-woo is heard from inside the restaurant. Dojun, the one who struck him, stands still, and the man who took the slap looks confused, calling him a scoundrel and saying I'll make him pay. A waitress interrupts the 2, saying they can't do that here. Kang Cheol-woo tells her to get out of the way while trying to attack, pushing the waitress aside. Kang Cheol-woo asks if Dojun is asking to lose his life, but the young man charges forward with his fist, effortlessly breaking through the criminal's defense. Kang Cheol-woo's eyes begin to bleed. He crouches down, holding his face. Dojun calls his name, asking if he was the one who took him to the portal and locked the entrance to leave him to die there. Because they have a lot to talk about, Kang Cheol asks why he would speak with someone who was abandoned by his own father and whose stepmother ordered his death. Dojun unlocks his phone and activates the voice recording mode, and tells Kang to repeat that. The man insults him in that moment, releasing fire in his hand and asking what he wants to hear, that his mother was dishonorable, and then he charges at the young man, telling him he should just die here. Dojun also activates his power, effortlessly blocking Kang's punch, then throwing his arm away. Kang wonders why his punch was repelled. Dojun prepares another mana strike, throwing the man across the room. The young man charges again, making the restaurant echo with the sound of punches. The waitress tries to call the police, asking what the number is, but her phone is snatched from her hand. Ju-yeon tells her to calm down because she'll handle it herself. The waitress simply thanks the lady. Dojun continues landing several punches on Kang. Ju-yeon thinks he's a B-rank hero on his own and can't believe she's seeing him get beaten up so easily, and wonders if Dojun is above B-rank, maybe even surpassed A-rank. But even so, she questions if it's possible to handle a B rank like that. Then she calls out to Mr. Seo Dojun, saying he'll kill the guy. The young man just looks down, then releases Kang from his grip. The girl asks how much he knows about Kang. Dojun says he knows enough, and what difference does it make? Ju-yeon says it's obvious, because Kang Cheol-woo's cousin is an S rank, Kang Yong-pyo. Dojun asks what the problem is. Ju-yeon reflects that he knows this and still acts like he doesn't care about the consequences, then warns him that the reason Kang Cheol-woo can go so far is due to Yong-pyo's protection, and that's dangerous because it might become a bigger misunderstanding for him. Dojun smiles. Ju-yeon asks if he isn't afraid of Yong-pyo. The young man says that more than that, the fact she knows so much about him is starting to get annoying. The two glare at each other with intensity, while the waitress hiding nearby thinks Ju Yeon will take care of everything. Ju Yeon apologizes for showing up again, but she was asked to come by her uncle, and if he went to the gem shop in Gisan and already sold his stones, but asks him to sell to her. Dojun asks how much she wants to buy, but the girl replies that she'll buy everything Mr. Dojun has. The young man responds that he still has a lot more. The girl says that the resources of an S-rank heroine are beyond imagination. Dojun says he doesn't like selling like this, but he has one condition, which wasn't anything too much for her, Hyun Jaeon. A bottle shatters against the wall. Han Hee-ju complains that he was supposed to be dead. They were told he had lost his life in that portal. Throwing another bottle at Manager Lee, he apologizes, saying even the Hero Association thought he had died. The woman tells him not to make excuses and asks how he plans to handle this, but Manager Lee says he has something to report first. Since Kang Cheol-woo was defeated by Dojin, and the woman repeats this in disbelief, because maybe Siu Dojin already knows something. She gulps nervously, thinking that if her father or husband finds out, it'll be a problem, but maybe she can hide it so it doesn't matter. Still, if it reaches the media, the group's stock price will drop, so she orders them to intercept the media and make it public that Group W will cut all commercials and reject any partnership offers with them. But first, they need to silence the police. Manager Lee says the police and media have already been silenced. Han Hee-ju thanks Director Lee for the good work. The man asks if she realizes this isn't the fundamental solution. Since Kang Cheol-woo is the cousin of Kang Yongpyo, Hee-ju repeats the name Yongpyo in shock. Kang Cheol-woo was already notorious trash in the hero world, but many say that Yongpyo genuinely cares about him. The truth is, Cheol-woo is just a pawn used to carry out the dirty work Yongpyo commands. The manager explains that Cheol-woo manipulates the media and the news since it would also look bad for Yongpyo, so he'll make a move. Han Hee-ju says they'll meet soon as he schedules the meeting. Then she asks if President Wang Changsdap of HCS Capital also betrayed them, and the man confirms, saying he's been looking after Dojin's family. The woman tells him to contact Prosecutor Park immediately, since Changsop must pay the price for abandoning her for Dojin. There were a total of 37 fracture zones in Korea. Among them, 5 were turning into portals, and the rest could only be used by heroes who coordinate their schemes. An agent hands over Miss Jaeyan's ID, wishing her a safe expedition. Then the group enters that fracture zone. Dojin reflects that there's only one entrance, and even knowing Jaeyan's identity, they'll still check and ensure her safety. Jang In-ju, an A-rank heroine and leader of the Kleum Guild, says it's really something for Jaeyan to be eager to hunt in a fracture zone first. Ju Yeon says she just wanted a little fun, then looks back, where Do-jun was hooded. His condition had been that she bring him into a fracture zone so he could sell all his magic stones at market price. Ju Yeon thinks he came all the way to one of the most dangerous fracture zones just for that, and it's insane. But she doesn't care because if it weren't for her uncle's favor, she still needed a hero's magic stone. So they step into the zone. In-ju asks who that guy is, and Ju Yeon says he's someone she knows. The girl teases her, asking if she believes that and if he's a potential boyfriend. Ju Yeon denies it, saying she only brought him because she owes him, and In-ju is shocked that an S-rank heroine owes someone, and that it's actually true. However, a gust of wind draws the other hero's attention. Dojun watches without reacting, while the whole group gets into battle stance. A flying chicken charges toward them. In-ju screams, asking what that monster is. Ju-yeon orders Jinju and Doyan to handle defense, and Sung-no to aim for its legs, but Do-jun simply charges forward, going straight for the creature's head. The other heroes shout his name, but the young man radiates his energy, saying he'll go first. Do-jun had already dropped his bag on the ground, as Ju-yeon gives her troops the attack order. He dashes out at incredible speed, jumping with all his strength and preparing to punch the chicken. Emitting his fire element mana, the blow closes in on the chicken, striking it and slamming it downward. The creature hits the ground, taking massive damage. Ju-yeon watches from a distance. The chicken had been defeated with a single punch, its face completely mangled. A member of the group asks if it really died from just one hit, but Do-jun replies that not yet, preparing to stomp, because that's how you take down this kind of chicken. The group members watch stunned. In-ju asks who this guy is. Ju-yeon says he's just a strong man, but her friend freaks out, asking how many heroes she thought could knock out a chicken like that in a single hit. Jaeyeon replies that if it's just about knocking it out like that, even her little sister could do it. In-jo complains that she's talking nonsense since it was especially an aerial battle, where the monster couldn't dodge the punch that was coming, saying it was a Dan monster. Jaeyeon wonders what his identity is, calling her Nuona and saying they need to change the plan, because she's going to the center for a moment. She approaches the young man and politely asks to speak. Do-jun says he has no intention of sharing anything with someone who didn't contribute to the fight. Jaeyeon replies that she wasn't planning on asking for that anyway, and her abilities didn't seem useful there, so if he wants to go deeper, Doojun smiles, saying this might be fun, at least. She says she knows this place well and will take the lead, so he should just follow her so he doesn't get lost. Charging ahead at extraordinary speed, Doojun watches without saying a word, then crouches to take off and dashes with equal speed, even breaking the ground. Inju comments that if Jayan is a bullet, then that guy is light. A group member asks if their master is going to follow them, but quickly dismisses the idea because it would be impossible, so they'll just hunt around the area like they usually do. Inju walks up to the chicken's body, saying that everyone loves them, A-rank heroes, but in front of an S-rank, they're nothing more than small fish, just like Jayan. And that guy was on the same level. Jayan keeps running forward, but glances back for a moment, wondering if she should slow down a little. However, Doojun appears in front of her, asking if they can't go faster. She's startled and nearly falls over. The girl wonders what the hell is going on. Had she just been overtaken? In South Korea, she's the second fastest. Doojun stops in front of her, saying he's slower than expected, and if she keeps running like that, she'll never catch him. Jayan asks when she was even trying to catch him, but the young man is already looking toward the mountain peak. He asks what's up there. Jayan explains that in that place is where the boss monster of this mountain resides, asking if he's heard of Kasserian, a 20-meter giant monster similar to a wyvern, but it usually takes at least 3 S-ranks to defeat him. Doojun asks if it's the one with the Sang Sang grade magic stone, and Jayan confirms, since that stone is imaginary and above the highest known grade. The young man steps forward for a moment. She asks if he's not thinking of doing it and tells him not to do anything reckless now. However, the young man simply runs ahead before she can finish her sentence. She wonders what he's trying to do, but charges after him, deciding she'll follow his lead. Both heroes push forward along the trail, eventually arriving at the path of that mountain. Jayan opens her eyes wide, wondering what just happened. With Kasserian already lying defeated on the ground before her, Doojun stores his sword in his backpack. Jayan thinks that Kasserian is incredibly powerful. Park Hail, a top-tier S-rank known for hunting Kasserians. Even he, on his first attempt, brought 30 A-rank heroes. All the A-ranks died, and Park Hail barely survived. After that, the superhero Park Hail brought another S-rank and 200 A-ranks for a rematch. Some heroes fired projectiles at the monster, but its wings were bound by vines. The same vines gripped the creature's arms. Park Hail and the others charged at it. Kasserian let out a roar in resistance, throwing dozens of A-ranks away. They finally took down Kasserian, but most of the heroes involved lost their lives. Sweet Life, Park Hail's Mega Guild, never recovered from that rematch even after 3 years. Doojun glances back for a moment, asking if she realizes she didn't contribute at all. The girl thinks that if she hadn't seen it with her own eyes, she wouldn't have believed it. That long-dreamed monster called Kasserian had been taken down by this man in a single blow. Doojun holds the crystal in his hands, looking at it thoughtfully, then says he no longer needs an escort and will move on his own from now on. She asks if he's not going to take Kasserian's byproducts, but the young man says that even after taking the crystal, there were lots of valuable materials left behind. He stops on the ground for a moment, telling her that those aren't valuable. The girl stares at him, unresponsive. Doojun says it's more efficient for him to spend his time collecting crystals from other monsters, and she can take as many byproducts as she wants, considering it part of her payment. Jayan looks at the claws of the Kasserian, but says she doesn't need them either. The group of heroes sits in the middle of the forest. The crystal bags were on the ground. Inju and the members of her group observe. A man comments that this guy brought a massive backpack and returned with it full of magic crystals. That amount was something a guild could hunt in 20 hours, and judging by the contents, maybe even 3 full days. The girl asks who he was, because his speed and that quantity were unreal, and if what Jayan said was true, that he defeated a Kasserian with no weapon or noticeable gear. That alone made him the strongest in Korea, or maybe even in the entire world. She looks back, seeing that Doojun had arrived there. The young man places another bag on the ground. The group members whisper that he filled another bag like that, and even if they talked about it, no one would believe them. They'd probably just call him insane. So it's best to make it clear they're not going to speak of what happened today, since no one would believe it anyway. Jayan approaches that man, talking to Doojun about personal matters. The group members comment that those two are totally flirting, and they knew it from the moment she brought that guy. The type of man who stands in front of her without looking around, and they really look like the perfect couple. Inju interrupts her own thoughts for a second, because those two weren't flirting. It was just weird. Since that guy seemed a bit rude with Jayan, and she wonders who the hell talks to her like that. The young man places a bag in her arms, turning to leave without saying anything else. Inju thinks he just decided to leave without even saying goodbye, but questions the backpacks since he just left them behind. Jayan says he told her that if people found out he defeated Kasserian, he'd become famous overnight. But fame was a hindrance, and he asked her to hold on to them for him. Inju wonders what kind of guy he is. Jaehyun stays silent for a few minutes, then repeats the question, her face red with embarrassment. In the middle of a residential area, inside one of the academies, a punching bag is being hit repeatedly. Park Hae-il kept striking it with all his strength, hitting it harder and harder, eventually tearing it apart. The young man curses the situation because Park Hae-il looked like crap. A subordinate asks the guild master to calm down, saying they say a frog that crouches jumps higher, and the more times he endures this, the more his reputation will grow. Hae-il replies that he's right, and it's like striking back against those who look down on him. And the butler agrees, saying that's how they'll build solid power. So when the time comes, everyone will kneel before the guild master. In any case, it's all about how to defeat Caesarion, and he asks who knows more than the guild master. Someday people will remember the hero who defeated Caesarion with the fewest number of people in the world, and the association will guarantee his rights. Hae-il says yes, that's true, and there's no one like him. But the guild was far smaller compared to 3 years ago, and he was still the only one who could defeat that bird monster. The subordinate confirms no one else would be capable except the guild master. A discussion continues in that training hall. There was a file containing information about Seo Do-jun. Kang Yongpyo asks if that's the guy. His subordinate confirms, saying that a few months ago, the hero Chulwoo tried to eliminate him by throwing him into a portal. Yongpyo asks if he awakened in that place where no one would survive, and the subordinate nods, informing him that the client was Hong Hee-ju, executive director of Group T and second daughter of Group Dalhyu, and Yongpyo asks why she was after a guy like that. The secretary says that apparently he's an illegitimate son of Group T and was taken in at age 7, but after Hee-ju gave birth to her son, Do-jun was expelled. Yongpyo says he's still blood, and family doesn't care about that, asking how much they paid for the job. The subordinate says it was 3 million won. Yongpyo asks if that bastard Chulwoo ended up destroyed. He says yes. He only heard that he was knocked out, but his body was covered in burn scars, and he was completely blind. Yongpyo replies that he's a vicious bastard, then hits a golf ball toward the hole, thinking that if it were him, he would have cut his lips and crushed his skull. And even more in this situation. There are rumors that Hyun Jae-in helped Seo Do-jun. Yongpyo misses the golf ball. He repeats the question of why she was helping that guy and what their relationship was. The man replies that he's not sure, but thanks to her testimony and the police, the case ended quietly. Yongpyo orders him to find out immediately what kind of relationship they have because he must know exactly what it is. The subordinate accepts the order and runs off, while Yongpyo looks down, gripping the club tightly. It had become deformed. He throws his equipment far away. Yongpyo thinks that soon, Hong Hee-ju will come to take care of what Chulwoo failed to do. So he accepts it, saying it's fine. After all, she's a Chable Harris and must have plenty of money. On a dimly lit street, Do-jun walks through that quiet city, thinking that, just as expected, farming in fractures was more efficient than in portals. But he still needs Jaehyun's help to get in there. The girl says that if she sells the Caesarion Mana Stones, people will start asking who got them, and the media will harass her, so she'll just store them. And if his goal is fame, she's not paying him, asking what he plans to do. Do-jun hands the backpack to her, saying he now needs to look for another way to enter fracture zones. But first he needs to rest in the new house Wang Changstop prepared. He then opens the door. Do-jun looks down fiercely, noticing there were more shoes than usual. In-young calls out to him as he enters the room. Several agents are sitting in that room in front of the women. One of the agents looks seriously at Do-jun. In-young hugs him, while the young man asks who these guys are. The blonde man introduces himself as Prosecutor Park Chul-yeon from the Seoul office, saying he must know Mr. Kwang Chang-seop. Do-jun looks ahead, a bit uneasy, but the man states that he's under arrest for assisting Kwang Chang-seop, CEO of HCS Capital, in high-level illegal operations. At the prosecutor's office, Do-jun is handcuffed to a chair. He glances to the side, a little tense, as someone enters the room and tells Director Lee not to worry, since both Chang-seop and Do-jun are being cooperative, but thanks him for taking care of his daughter's education, then asks to give his rewards to Director Hong. The reason he became a prosecutor was precisely to remove trash like this from society. He throws stacks of paper onto the desk. Chul-yeon asks what the hell he's been doing all this time, because according to what's listed, he should be looking at about 10 years in prison, and he already has hundreds of pieces of evidence against him, all through Kwang Chang-seop. Do-jun just stares ahead, visibly angry. Chul-yeon gets irritated and tells this idiot to take a good look because he thinks he's lying. Do-jun asks if this is because of that bitch Hong Hee-ju. The man tries to play dumb, acting like he doesn't know who that is, but the young man thinks that judging by this mood, Wang Chang-seop's side has already been taken down. He tried to stay quiet and low profile, but at this point, He doesn't know where or how they got the information, but he figures Korean prosecutors are a joke, and this bastard's life is over now. Dojun glares at him with fury, making Cholyong visibly nervous just from his presence. He steps back a bit, unsettled, then stammers, and gets ready to strike Dojun's face with his hand, but stops halfway. An agent announces that Prosecutor Park must step outside for a moment, suddenly noticing something strange and shouting about it. Cholyong asks if the machine is broken or something, but the subordinate denies it, saying he checked, and there's no problem with the device. The hero scan shows he's a normal person, yet Park says that makes no sense because he is CEO Dojun. His subordinate replies that somehow, all the data on his awakening is completely wrong. Park thinks that information came from Group T, so there's no way it could be incorrect, and the fact he knows Hong Heeju's name proves it. Dojun sighs a bit while sitting in the chair, thinking that now he understands why people call Korean prosecutors trash, and he should just destroy everything. Just take his grandma and Yeon-young and run somewhere. Jaehyun asks what he's doing here, surprised to see the young man. Dojun replies that not even he knows why. The girl asks if he did something serious, and the young man says she was shocked, but using his power would only make things worse. So he wants to know if she came to help. The girl answers, not exactly, but she just wants to know if he truly didn't do anything wrong, because she wouldn't ignore an innocent person being falsely accused. Dojun replies that if that's all. The girl warns that the Hero Association is going to launch an investigation, and they were keeping an eye on unlicensed heroes and the fracture at the house in Napo. Dojun asks about his family. The girl complains that he's treating her like a secretary or something, and asks if he's just going to request her to check on his family too. Dojun looks at her coldly, and Jaehyun looks away, replying that his family is safe and he doesn't need to worry. Dojun thanks her, saying he'll make sure to repay that debt. Jaehyun, embarrassed, says that either way, he should hang on a little longer because she'll resolve it as fast as she can. The girl couldn't directly prove Dojun's innocence. She exposed Prosecutor Park Cholyong for accepting illegal bribes, and he was dismissed. Then a fair investigation confirmed that Dojun had nothing to do with the incident. He couldn't avoid punishment for being an unlicensed hero, but Jaehyun's active defense also removed the suspension sentence. The woman's car radio reports that monsters never seen before have appeared in the United Kingdom, attacking civilians with a powerful jumping ability. Dojun states that those are Makashans. The girl asks how he knows that, since it's a new monster, and only the association knows that name. Dojun reflects that monster names aren't created randomly. The Mana Stone contains energy and also inherent information, so it can reveal the monster's name and other data. On modern-day Earth, this is done with science, but in the ruined world, it was done with magic. And if the same monster appears in both worlds, most of the monsters there, Dojun would know by name. Then the young man advises her that she can easily deal with them using Crimson Fire ants. Their venom is useless against humans, but it's strong for paralyzing Makashans, and she should keep that in mind, because she won't get far otherwise. Jaehyun keeps a serious expression but asks what exactly Mr. CEO Dojun is. The young man looks down while the woman hits the brakes and stares at him teasingly. She asks if he's even listening. Dojun says that if he were to take Hong Heeju's life, he wants to know what would happen.
Our video ends here. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, bye bye.